Welcome to the 11:30 panel of the forum track. We're going to talk about the, we're going to kind of continue the conversation that we started yesterday in the Towers of Midnight Review. I think there was a lot of interest around not only what Aviendha saw when she was in Rhuidean, but the fascinating character of Nakomi and what she's going to tell us in this book, and then hopefully maybe even in the next book. So again, a distinguished panel of guests who are experts in the topic, and I will let them introduce themselves. Amanda?
I'm Amanda Keene, former keeper at Terminal.net, current secretary, and I just sold the books.
That's really quick.
Yeah.
I'm Linda Taglieri. I'm here from Australia. I'll leave that this time. I used to be admin at whatmania.com, which has now closed, and I have my own blog, The 13th Depository.
Matt Hatch, I like Theresa.
I think we should discuss Nakomi.
Excellent.
Like, do we actually think she's a real person, or do we think she's... Because like, we've been sitting there looking at the Dark One, you know, pulling up ghosts and things like that because of this touch. Do we think that this is actually the light getting involved to a certain extent and sending her something that she needs to know in the form of an ideal woman?
But when you say the light, you mean the creator?
Yeah.
So,
Or the pattern. Or the
Maybe
pattern.
Why would the pattern care about it? Why would the pattern care about the future of the isle?
Well, because of the fact that it could totally change the pattern.
the wheel obviously cares.
Yeah, but why would
The wheel has the heroes, so obviously it's invested in its own,
Yes,
well-being,
existence.
keeping its own existence.
but with Johnson, it would also still be the same.
So no, this is a good question. Is Nakomi not necessarily a hero, but is Nakomi another balancing mechanism that we've never seen before of the pattern itself the wheel is using to, I mean, almost, I guess you could almost take it from the Matrix standpoint of who's the guy he meets at the end? He walks in
The architect.
The architect, right? A manifestation of the Matrix, you know, trying to make this decision happen, you know, and Nakomi comes out of nowhere. That's
And she leaves out of nowhere. Like, she leaves no trace, basically.
She doesn't, yeah, she doesn't. And obviously, there's the implication of that actually occurring. She'd been running, right? Aviendha had been running, and she had kind of taken a break here, and she stops. And there's this, it's not made clear in the text, but it really seems like she could have fallen asleep in a nap right at that moment. And then everything she then experiences is a dream manipulation. There's a lot of implications there for the food that was made and the disappearance, you know, this person coming back and coming in and she not hearing this person, and Nakomi leaving and not noticing it, and her pack being gone, and the food actually being cooked really quickly. There's a lot of, not Taglieri, but dream type possibilities there. So certainly I guess you could even take Nakomi as a mechanism wheel used through the dream to interface with Aviendha also. So I think those are two viable possibilities. Anybody else have some thoughts on Nakomi that they want to share here? Yeah.
I'll share one, but I'm just stealing it from your website.
Oh, okay.
I really like to write up about how it could potentially be barren. And there's a lot of mannerisms that Nakomi has.
Therese.
Yeah.
She has to leave on. Therese would love talking about Baron.
Okay, because according to the guy's theory, whoever submitted it to your site,
Theory.
okay, according to her theory, there's a lot of mannerisms that Nakomi and Baron share, and it's very clear that at the end, though she thinks it is an IEL, there are no definitive characteristics apart from her clothes that would indicate that she would be an IEL. And even though, chronologically speaking, in terms of the text, Baron would have been dead from our perspective, there is no telling necessarily if Aviendha's scene comes before that scene in the Gathering Storm where Baron is actually killed. So I think that the possibility exists, even if you can debunk it as saying that it's not something she would want to do, or I think the timeline makes it possible.
So in support, I disagree with Therese on this only because I have my own pet theory on it, but in support of it, there isn't any definitive timeline that you can say that she was dead by that moment.
Yeah.
So she certainly could have been alive. There's also the implications that Baron knew much more about Teleronriad than we're ever told in the books. I mean, she's never clear. I asked Maria this long series of, Linda and I and a couple others had put this 90 question thing about Baron together, and Maria answered like 4. She raphoed every other one. It's an epic list of raphos. Or she said she did raphos. I said raphos. But some of those questions had to do with what Farron actually knew about Teleronriad, how many times she had actually visited. Because if you go back and read those parts with Egwene, it's very awesome how she answers, how Robert Jordan had her answer those questions, because she never says, I only visited Teleronriad once. She just says, once I visited, or, she kind of speaks about it in terms where you're like, well, how many other times did you use that ring? And we all know that the ring is a training ring. So again, did Varen learn how to get into Teleronriad through the use of this ring over a long period of time, etc. So the Varen thing, for support of it, it's a fun idea. I mean, I don't think it's true, but if Theresa was here, I'm sure she'd love to support the idea, but yeah.
But like, is the theory that she was actually there with Aviendha, or that it was, or that it was Teleronriad?
I'm not sure. I can't remember
I thought
reading
it was actually in,
But
in
I
the
mean,
real world.
we have to then assume that she mask mirrors herself, that she knows how to invert weaves, and that she knows how to mask her ability to channel. Because Aviendha says very specifically she cannot channel, and she doesn't recognize Varen as an Aes Sedai with the smooth face, which Varen has.
I don't think she sees her face at all, then, does she?
Yes, she does.
Okay.
It's like, yeah.
And Theresa is actually doing all 3 of those, yes.
Right,
Yeah,
right. She would have to, she would have to be doing all of that, and I don't think, the ability to mask, to be able to mask your ability to channel, that is not something that the Forsaken have to share with the Aes Sedai.
She was what?
That's what I'm saying. It's not something that the Forsaken have shared with the Black Aes Sedai.
Karen studied everybody's tricks, though.
She did, but we've not seen. This would be the only time that we would have seen her pull that ability out.
Baron's awesome enough to have done it.
That's the theory, I mean.
I was gonna say, it's just.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
if in fact Varen were already dead, could it be a possibility she could be a hero of the Morn?
So that's
And
turned also
they
through
wait
that.
in Teleronriad, and she
So-
wouldn't have the face anymore.
She would have the original face that she was
Yeah.
born with.
Yeah, Therese also put that out, was the possibility that it wouldn't matter. She could have been dead, but also taken up as a hero and then been interacting as though Brigitte did,
Yeah.
But there's also, the question will come in here when we'll talk about that, what is the purpose behind her visit? And we'll talk about that soon, but I think there's a lot of other, Linda and I once sat down and we made a list. So, but let's throw people out, anything we don't mention, I'll throw out there. But is there any other ideas that you guys want to share about Nakomi and who she might be and why?
Well, just going back to Varen, she could have just entered a dream and not had to, they talk about you got to be careful about entering somebody a sleeper's dream, but you can do it.
Yeah.
So she could have just, without pulling Aviendha into Teleronriad, she could have just entered her dream and in control of her dream, look however she wanted to look.
Okay, so, and it's not just Varen. Okay, so there are a lot of people that could have been manipulating that dream. We're talking, I love the idea here that was posed, that Demandred was doing it. I love that. I told you about that, yesterday. So my pet theory is that it was the wise ones that were involved. And the reason why I believe it was the wise ones, if you consider Aviendha from back in the Shadow Rising, even in Dragon Reborn, Aviendha certainly has a role to play. Aviendha's kind of the Baron, in many ways. She's kind of somebody we've learned a lot about, but it's kind of, her true purpose hasn't really come. Her time, and in this book, it finally kind of, wait, why are we with Aviendha, and why do we care about this thing with the columns, and who's this Nakomi person, and all of a sudden she sees the future of the Aiel, and this whole thing is about, this whole thread of Rand going to the Aiel, and them trying to save the remnant. It's never been sufficiently answered, like what does the remnant mean and such. And so now all of a sudden that Aviendha is involved in that specifically, and we're getting more information about that. I believe the wise ones from a dream walking perspective, knew about Avienda's importance to their salvation, to their remnant, and that they've been helping her along. That whole process that they talked about of like, well, we were really hard on you. They were hard on Aviendha, I believe, because they knew what importance she held in the future of the Aiel, and that they knew this was going to happen, that she needed to see these things with the columns. And if you look at Nakomi, this is my theory, Nakomi helps Aviendha make the decision in the end to go back to the columns. She leans her towards this idea that, look, this thing that you used to do is all over. You know, this, yeah, you used to go there, it was all about going there and learning about what you've done, but everyone knows about the Aiel now. That's past, what's gonna happen to him afterwards? And it's that, if you read about Aviendha, she comes to believe it's her own idea. She's like, yeah, that was it, that's all I did. Could this really be all important? And then she goes back to the columns because she wants to know almost more. So it's my belief that Nakomi led her to that, and so there has to be purpose there.
Can I just add that, support you.
I want to just.
When I was looking at the death of Adrian, that chapter, Malane says to Aviendha just before they, you know, I wonder what were we made for, like what is going to happen when all this is over, you know, are we going to stay here? I don't want to leave and all that. So she was the very first one to actually put Aviendha on
That idea.
on that thought process.
Really, just in support of all three of them is like you just said, she made her think that it was her own idea, which is like what a manipulator does. Like it's that's the way you manipulate people, is give them the idea and make them think it was their own idea. And it's really in support of all three because the wise ones, Varen and Demander, are kind of all. So it's like,
I mean, the problem with the Forsaken is that
why would he want to?
why would any of the Forsaken go?
Yeah.
Why would they care? What? They're not going to care.
Who knows she's there?
I can get it closer a couple of days.
In terms of what happens after the last battle, all of the Forsaken,
They're going to win it, so
they're going to exactly. They're going to win it. So why do they care what happens to the Aiel after?
So the question is what Aviendha saw going to affect the last battle? So if Aviendha sees that, what I'm saying is if the Forsaken got her to see something about the future that would then push her to make decisions that she wasn't normally going to make, that will then be to their benefit, I can see them doing it.
Yeah,
So it's like,
I don't think that decision was of that time.
no, I'm not saying I understand all of the plans of the Forsaken and why they would use it. I don't believe it was, but yeah, it'd be weird if it was Demander, but it's loony enough that. So right here, then there, and then right here.
So the implication then, are you suggesting that the wise ones would have also previously seen that vision of the future? And if so, why would it have then stopped when Aviendha saw it? Like, you kind of made it sound like they knew that would happen. Is that because you think that they've seen the future as well?
Yes, I mean, so if you think about all the point of views we have in the book, and all the things we have been shown, show me a time where Jordan ever gave us a dream walking scenario for the wise ones.
No.
What I mean by that is, he never gave us that because it's almost like a deus ex machina, of course. It's like, oh, they know the exact future, what's going to happen. It's not exact, but they're so knowledgeable that as soon as you show that person, it's kind of like, oh, if they actually showed us one of these people seeing this happen, it wouldn't, I don't know, it would detract from the plot in many ways.
But then why would it then stop when Aviendha used it, if that wasn't like a one-time only, okay, we're good?
Why would when you say stop, you mean?
But the terrain rails seem to like break, I guess, when Aviendha used it.
So I don't know if it's, okay, so I don't know if it's clear that it breaks. I think what's clear is that Aviendha walking through it again, nothing would happen.
It doesn't work for her anymore.
Right, I don't know that it's totally clear that somebody else could not walk.
Okay, I just might have misinterpreted.
I think it was reprogrammed myself. It's that she reprogrammed.
Okay. Interesting.
Oh, sorry, right here.
But it almost seems like what Nakomi's saying had less to do with trying to get Aviendha to go back through, which I think Malane herself, that comment would have been sufficient to motivate her to do that. But it more, because in what she sees, you'll end up trying to be what they still were, and that's part of what leads to the problem in their less than half of the battle. And it's more like a warning of think about these things and do them differently so that this doesn't happen. And which leads to believe that she either has foretelling or has been through it herself or has some knowledge of the future.
But that's, yeah, and that's why, like, it's that belief that it's that belief that she might know. Yeah, you'd have to say that Baron, well,
Okay.
Baron, it's really hard to say, it's hard to ever say Baron doesn't know something. Yeah. It's very clear we haven't been told that she knows it, but it's very clear we didn't know lots of things about Baron. So, but yeah, I think the Nakomi part I like a lot. She does seem like she has some knowledge, and that's why she's seeding it, that whole kind of like suggestion thing, because she has some knowledge of the future. So the question is, how would she have come on this? And that's why it's that, is she the creator, or is she another mechanism or not, or is she a dream walker? Is she, someone threw out that she was a dream walker, kind of like not part of the Wise One's council or anything. She was just kind of like a little prophetess out in the wilderness type of thing in the Aiel, and she knew about this was going to happen, and I've seen that idea posed.
Well, I mean, when Aviendha went up to the Tarangrail, and she said that there was sort of a consciousness about it. And obviously the Tarangrail is somehow connected to Taglieri and all the different worlds.
Sure.
And what if it's the Tarangrail?
That's what I was thinking, that somehow Rhuidean was reaching out, like whatever was
I was
there,
gonna
it's like
say-
reaching out to her while she was out in the wings.
Because obviously, there's almost sort of an air of it calling her back to it when she's done. She's sitting there and she gets sort of fascinated by it. And
I mean, that might be part of something of her talent.
right.
In other words, like her
Well, yeah,
talent
yeah,
might give
there's
her some.
affinity.
It might.
Yeah.
She might sense.
Yeah.
She might sense something that no one else can sense about Tarangrail. Because I don't think the Tarangrail necessarily has sentience or anything, but that there might be an affinity there that it might have sensed, like, hey, you and I know each other, and I need you to come back here, type of thing.
Yeah.
That works well when she's in Rhuidean, but when she meets Nakomi, she's still some distance out.
But
she can stretch that far.
Yeah, that's a question there.
But if she's napping, if she's in Taglieri.
Oh, that's what you're saying. You're connecting it.
With Taglieri.
Through to
Um, But
So you're saying like the Nakomi as manifestation of the Tarangrail columns? Almost.
well, or something similar to that would be,
Where were you last night?
Yeah.
That would have been
Right.
like that. I like that.
But what happens to the people who wander through and never come back out of those glass columns?
Just disappear.
What they just disappear. What happens to them?
If that's in Taglieri, they'll die forever.
Well, but if what happens is they get sucked into Taglieri through the glass columns, and that's why they never come out, is because they get stuck in the dream world, so to speak.
Wouldn't they
Yeah.
just
During this week, she
They
died.
die.
Yeah, where's the body?
To branch off.
But yes, that's good. Hold on one second. Okay. You're gonna hear that right here. But yeah, it's
I need a body.
we'll end up back there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're also kind of moving away from the original thing that you said about the wise ones, and I think they're one of the only ones that know that she's going back there. So it's possible that they may have affected her that way, but they still seem very hard. I mean, they're getting better at dealing with change, but I don't know if they would you think they would go as far as saying, hey, go back and do this differently than we've ever done it before?
Then they're forbidden to do.
Exactly.
Which is an interesting question in and of itself. Why are they forbidden to go back? Is that something that's been passed down through the wise ones for however long? Like the first person who did it went back and saw this and saw Aviendha.
And it could be another thing that's hidden, kind of like where their origin is, but it's only the wise ones know.
And this forbidden piece is great if you read it. It's very specific. Aviendha thinks about the Tarangrail and says that it was forbidden for them to walk a second time in. And I've made a case recently, like, why would you prohibit something that did not have any? Is that what you're gonna say?
No, it's forbidden because the people that went into it the first time, when they got to see the future of the Aiel as it was at that point in time, died. And they couldn't come back because it was too much for them.
What you're saying is forbidden because somebody saw them go in a second time.
Anybody who went into it a second time died, never came out, so they forbid it.
Even people that made it for the first time, the second time died.
Do you remember when the Maureen, when they're first teaching Maureen about dream walking and all of that, she kept going back and going back, and they would dream and dream, and they'd talk about what it was, and they were looking for the best dream of the future, and that's why she knew she had to go push Lanfear through the doorway, because that was the only way they could have a future for the Aiel, where the Aiel would have a remnant of a remnant to survive.
Well, there's two different terrangrals in there. Remember, we have the
The rings and the
rings, and we have the columns. So the rings is the individual one where you can go.
And that's
through
where-
Well, they need Aviendha to go through the columns the second time because she's strong enough to get out of them. And they know they've got to
Bring
get
back that
Aviendha,
information.
but the only way to get Aviendha to do that is Moraine has to push her through the things for the other events to happen that has Aviendha find out her talent for terranglial and everything.
I like this idea a lot that conceptually somebody went through a second time, never came out, and they forbade it because they didn't want any unnecessary death. It's like you went through once, that's good enough. And they never knew what necessarily happened potentially if somebody went through the second time. And maybe the dream walking saw that and knew that she was the only one that could make it through. There's a nice
I also think that whoever Nakomi is, that they were people who had gone through the rings and knew that that was what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to contact Aviendha.
Oh, that's I like that idea.
That's probably why they were there, because that was the best future they saw for them, that they needed to be there.
I would say that's good, except for the part where it's so mysterious. In other words, like if it was just your thing, like you'd think you'd walk up and go, "Hey, I saw this in the rings. I'm supposed to be here. Let's talk." And not be mysterious. I come in, I bake your favorite meal. I walk away, and you don't hear me walk away.
You don't know how they used it, whether it was had a drink or
That part's true. What I'm saying is, if it was, I like the idea that it was somebody's, and maybe it was a wise one's that had passed away, and somehow it's not. Who knows? I like that.
That was their task.
Yeah, that's good. There's lots of hands here now.
Yes, that's true.
Well, that was Aviendha's second trip to Rhuidean, and given her affinity with terranglial, she might have had a special experience in the ring one. Not to mention, the terranglial have this mysterious ability to get people to go through them. Like, Matt goes through the one in Tyr, and that one directly leads him to go through the one in Rhuidean.
Right.
So it could be just a thing with the terranglial and the future that, say, you didn't see enough, now you got to do the other one. And it could have been one of the visions that she had that said she had to go through twice unconsciously.
I like the sentient terranglial thing. It's good.
I mean, she says that there's a consciousness to it. I think that's.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's an interesting concept that there might be in the creation of these terranglial that you're passing some of your will, some of the some will or consciousness to it. That's kind of fun.
Just getting back to the crystal columns as a dip into terranglial or whatever, because the bodies do seem to disappear. Could that also be why the wise ones prohibit people from entering terranglial in the flesh? You just remember when Rhuidean had to travel to Saladar, that wise ones are like, well, you can get there doing this, but it's evil and it's horrible and it will take part of your soul.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, but I mean, they knew that the Forsaken did that, and the
Exactly, but I mean,
the Forsaken kind of thing. Look at them. They did it.
Well, but if you connect it to that, I mean, you're donating a piece of your soul to something that essentially eats people.
I like that. So there certainly is a direct tie to terranglial, but there's also a tie to the mirror worlds.
Right.
And it's not. I don't see it as a direct gateway into terranglial.
Right. No.
It's a mechanism that somehow is taking advantage of all these unseen layers.
It's almost like a crystal television screen that lets you, kind of skim, the possible futures of everything.
I think it makes it. Honestly, my belief on that is it makes a construct of. It makes a construct of a mirror world in essence. It takes all the data and creates a place. So they are kind of traveling to something that is then being created for them out of all of this information, and so it has some properties like terranglial.
Right.
That reminds me of both the Nomus rings
where they go through
Yes,
the tower,
that's what
and
I'm-
also the oval ring where they're tested for us.
Yeah, the rings, are the arches.
that is consciously made for foreign
Yeah.
people.
The arches are certainly, I mean, obviously there's a past, present, future type of component to them, and sort of there's some mirror world aspects. And so, hold on, I'm trying to right here and then right here. Okay.
It is, if I'm remembering correctly, it is possible that the crystal columns are one of the few ter'angreal that are actually being used for what they were designed for. Because if we remember back when Rhuidean was founded, part of the thing there that the ancient Aes Sedai who were there was that the chiefs would come through this. So this could actually be one of the few ter'angreal that it's not, we just discovered, and we don't know if this is what it was designed for. This could be all intentional.
Well, they seem to have set it up.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, completely.
That is true.
I like that.
On that vein, I mean, I don't know if I buy all ter'angreal have some kind of sentience, but
Yeah.
this particular
This
one,
Yeah.
I mean, how did it get all those memories? The Jenail were all there in that city setting up. Maybe, like, I'm about to die, I go walk through here, I give it this memory, this memory, this memory. Now all of my, reverse ancestors will go back and see my stuff. Like it's imprinting your memories into the ter'angreal, so now it knows, and then it has the whole personality of the Aiel and a sense of preservation for those people because it has all of their memories.
I mean, I've always wondered,
That's
how
actually-
does it
yeah.
give you your genetic line, your bloodline?
Well,
When, and,
Yeah.
and what if you've got like ones that kind of
It's like
diverge?
read only.
Like which
Yeah.
ones are going to show you?
Now that she's
Obviously,
programming involved.
I don't know that we know for sure that it does, like going
well,
back. They believe it
that.
shows that they're direct
Right.
ancestors, but we don't know that it's
Right.
showing they're direct ancestors.
Sure.
Well, and you're certainly seeing mother, father,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, we're seeing this, but whether or not that actually directly correlates
Yeah.
to you, we don't know.
I just want to touch on a couple of things because like I don't have a specific theory that I believe they're all really good and they all make a lot of sense. That's why it's like you can't really pick one. But the sentient ter'angreal thing is like we do know they created sentient things with the one power, like the Nim. They were created. They were sentient. They thought so. Maybe like they made some like that's part of what this is. Like it has a sentience to it. And then the ancient Aes Sedai, like he said, where they knew what it was used for. The only reason I would lean away from that is because they said, Jordan has said that those Aes Sedai weren't from the Age of like they weren't channelers during the Age of Legends. So, and since they hadn't made ter'angreal since the Age of Legends, like they wouldn't know specifically maybe. I mean, it could have been in text, it could have been, because it's only so recent, so they still might have had some text then. But that's the only reason I would lean away for that, but there's no like specific reason why not. And then the Wise One theory on how they would know, like why would they know, is because I think might be because people that have the ability to dream walk, some of them like Egwene can get the foretelling through the dream walking, so they could have had that and they would have maybe passed that down.
Yeah, because the dream walking capability is, as far as we know, again, we haven't really been shown this, and I have to believe that there's some purpose behind that. That we've seen dreaming, we haven't seen dream walking in the sense of, because they talk about it though, they talk about seeing multiple futures, they talk about reading the dream, not, and different than what dreamers do.
Yeah.
And so the question is, that's why I like the Wise One concept because it makes sense for the whole Aiel arc of the story.
Yeah.
Because they've always been concerned. Like, they set Aviendha up to go with Rand. Why? Because they were concerned about the remnant.
Yeah.
They were concerned about Aviendha coming back to Rhuidean. I say Rhuidean, I don't know if that's right pronunciation. Because they were concerned again about the remnant, I believe. You know, it's like the Aviendha arc and the Aiel arc has been about that remnant, about that surviving. But now you realize, in my mind, you see the end of this book, and you're like, oh, they're not just concerned about surviving, they're concerned about generations ahead.
Yeah.
Not just surviving the last battle, that they don't become these people that we see in her first trip back.
Yeah.
And you wonder, oh, okay, so if the Wise Ones actually gotten a peek of that, maybe one of the Wise Ones went through a second time, again, and saw Aviendha's kids. Maybe her generations go back. She saw that Aviendha's children were responsible for this, and maybe that's why they picked up on Aviendha and got her, and knew she was going to be involved with Rand, and that's why they wanted her. Again, so to me, the Wise One, I love the connections there.
I just want to touch on what she said about the them imprinting their memories on it, because it makes sense, and I just thought of something when she said it. Was like, maybe the reason why when some people go into it is like their ancestors, like they took their best and their brightest, or like their best people, and they said, okay, here, go do this now. And then the people that go in and don't come out don't have maybe their ancestors didn't go in there because they weren't worthy or whatever.
Well, there's certainly a connection to
I
mirror
like that.
worlds. I mean, it's obvious mirror worlds go into the future and the past, and we don't know. We've never been told if mirror worlds get reset at a new turning. So what I mean by that is we don't know if there are mirror worlds from other turnings still
going
accessible in some way by these ter'angreal. But obviously, this is a lot of future information. The ability, if you think about this, for it to come up with a scenario, a future that is somehow relatively, we don't know if it's the actual future, but it's a future. In my mind, it's just one possibility. I don't think it's necessarily the actual one. There's too many variables, but it's a possibility, and it's obviously a good possibility for the pattern to still, for it to be so clear and still accessible in that way. So I don't necessarily think it's all the imprinting, but I like the idea of imprinting because of, by the way, this whole sentience and imprinting is cool.
Can I just say that Aviendha said that she had seen her children's faces when she went through the rings, and also we know that the Weiss ones interrogated her very thoroughly after her testing to see what she saw or what her pictures were. So I think that they learned a lot from her.
Yeah, sorry, we'll go back. It was right. I think you had a question.
Well,
I know it's been a while.
yeah, it's kind of sidetracked, but talking about it being forbidden, like somebody else was saying, that this is probably being used the way it was meant to be used, and it was based off of foretellings, those Aes Sedai had, so they could know that it would cause problems along the way, and it could have been the original Aes Sedai that forbade them from going through, and in their culture, in order for the Aes Sedai,
because it's so conservative, they would always stick
that
to
prohibition,
that.
that's
That
true.
would stick to
That's very true. It could have been the Aes Sedai that knew that if they saw that, maybe they had a foretelling and they saw that would be terrible.
Which sort of also fits in with the fact that the two most important people to ever go through those columns was Rand and Aviendha. So they were the only ones that should ever do anything tricky with those.
Like a fail-safe.
Right here.
Yeah. Yep. I would say if we assume that Nakomi was sent there to get Aviendha to go through the columns again, and we assume that Nakomi would then know what Aviendha would see, what do we think Aviendha is going to do because she's seen this vision of the possible future?
And
what would that?
That's what the next
who would
book
that
says.
serve?
Is it just
Okay.
possible, or is it?
Before I think it's a good place to jump. Before we do that, I want to throw out some fun possibilities. Nakomi, go ahead.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
real
We should
quick-
go right there.
I was gonna say real quick on the Aviendha thing, and a possible feature is the fact that, Aviendha says that this seems more real to her than what she's seen previously going through. And so it might be a possible future thing. I think that it's actually, her impression of it is that it's not possible, that this is, that by God, she doesn't think she's necessarily going to succeed, but she's going to try.
Yeah,
To
and
change it,
she
but-
explicitly says that.
She very specifically
Yes.
says that it feels more real to her than anything she's ever.
But I guess what I'm
experienced.
saying is, obviously, if she changes it, it wasn't the future, so it
But
remains a
well-
possibility.
Well, I mean, because we see, one of the things that we see from Ankala's, I think, perspective is that her great mother was always going on about, well, what's the purpose of the ideal, da, da, da. So obviously that's something that Aviendha, we sort of kind of see.
Yeah.
What
Right.
could be some
I guess, but it seems like a future without Aviendha seeing it, because once she sees it, she changes it.
Maybe she wants
Potentially,
to change.
or not.
She specifically
Maybe she thinks
says-
she wants to change it and she can't change it.
Yeah.
There's that possibility. Oh, and by the way, the Dark Friend, I did think this through a little bit while we were sitting here. What could the Forsaken or the Dark One's plan be? It could be plan B.
Mhm.
In other words, if the Dark One doesn't win, the Dark One's been through this who knows how many times.
Yeah.
So he knows he loses sometimes, or it passes to another age. If this passes to another age and the Aiel were responsible for
Helping
thwarting him, what does he want to do?
Destroy
it. And so what I'm saying is, there's lots of reasons why a Dark Wise One could be involved, or Forsaken could be involved, and they don't even know. Like, why do you care that I go do this? And the Dark One's just like, go do it. I don't really care that you know. So I mean, there's that availability that this is not like necessarily a plan,
But
but
there's
like.
another reason to that, and that is fits in with my obsession of the Aiel turning to the way of belief. He knows that will break the Aiel as a nation. I mean, they're currently united, But if there's this massive argument over whether they're going to, where they're going to go in the future, are they going to adopt the way of belief, are they going to do, that would break.
Yeah, so I think that,
Which cause, chaos, it's going to
I don't think we can close the door. Nakomi as Marty McFly, time traveling. It's a possibility, right? Bubbles of good. There's bubbles of good.
Those are in champagne.
I'm just saying.
We'll get a balance.
There could be a bubble of good, I mean, that was one of the ideas that we had thrown together. A hidden group of the Gen IEL. Again, there's some crazy stuff.
Well,
The plaid.
well, I mean, she says, she's like, I'm far from my home. Well, I'm not necessarily far from my home, but it's far from me. I
Right.
mean,
That's why that one came up.
I mean, it really, that's,
And somehow there's a remnant of the Gen IEL that are.
again, I think there's been that Gen IEL in the Toronto Real. It's part of what makes it sentient.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Do we want to move on to this question of, okay, so, restate the question.
Okay, so if Nakomi was trying to urge Aviendha to go through the columns and she knew then what Aviendha would see, what do we think Aviendha is going to do to try to change the future, and what are the implications on, is that good for the light, the dark, or the IEL? And then maybe that you could figure out kind of backward what Nakomi was looking for.
Yeah, any ideas?
I'm still convinced Nakomi is mind-trapped land fear or a dark friend in some way, and this is going to break them, and Aviendha is going to fight Rand in some way, and like when Rand was almost killing Min, he broke and started using a true force. He's going to break again when he has to kill Aviendha.
So in some way that getting Rand.
This is a bad thing.
So being that this is going to create conflict. You think this is going to create conflict between Aviendha and Rand, and split them versus bring them together in some way.
See, partially though, that assumes that Aviendha and Rand are going to have much interaction with the last
Well,
battle.
they've got to have.
Well, they have to have some,
right? That's only if he survives. That's only if he doesn't survive. If he survives, babies are leaders. And so I mean, it's
Yeah, that's true. That could be left out. Well,
we know that there's going to be men's viewings that aren't finished.
If they don't, if there's no interaction here, then previous to the book's ending, then we're kind of left with the belief that he did live. And so, yeah, the question becomes, would they leave it out there like obviously Rand is alive? That goes to that, is Rand going to live? And that's a different question. But
Yeah, I also
Okay,
think so. I also think that they will leave this hanging. I mean, you think that you probably take 1 or 2 steps before the last battle, but we won't see the result. I think this is one of the things that Jordan wanted to left hanging for the work.
That's gonna be mean, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you're saying, your theory in this is, we're not going to answer that question, or whether or not it was an actual real,
Yeah.
whatever that future is,
Yeah.
we're not going to know.
We won't.
And we're all going to be left talking about
Yes.
Nakomi like we used to talk about.
Yes.
Nakomi.
That's
Don't solve that. I want to
Nakomi, I'll be honest, last week. I'll be okay if Nakomi's not resolved. I'll give up my Asmodean obsession. I won't really, but sorry, ideas about what Aviendha is going to do with this information that we will see. Yeah.
One of the things is just for trying to get Bielaczyc to strengthen their bond with certain wetlands. Like they're very separate. Now she's made strong connections with some of them, but a lot
Pool parties.
of other
Ice cream social.
It's that like separation that eventually causes the people who are trying to fight Shang to kind of all come to pieces and fall apart. And if she tries to strengthen those bonds, it could help in the last battle.
Well, we have one very strong connection there because of her sister.
Right, but her family was one of the last ones to have that connection, right? The connection is with her, but the rest of the Aiel remain very separate and look down on the one, and leading to people to bridge that gap.
I was going to say, and even so, it's like 2 generations down, their granddaughters, I mean, even their granddaughters don't seem to be that friendly. I mean, when we see Ankala and Talana.
Big notes.
Take to us. I was going to say, they're just kind of like, particularly Ankala, which, she's got some other stuff going on. But, I mean, she's just really bitchy about her cousin, and so, I mean, they may not, Aviendha is sitting here wondering, where am I gonna go? Like, am I gonna go with Rand and live in Camelin with my first sister in Rand? Where are they gonna be? Like, and maybe in this future that we see, she returned with the Aiel and stayed with the Aiel and raised her children with the Aiel, and now maybe it changes the way she raises her children and where she raises them and how close they are to her first sisters.
Because the Goetz seems to be also moving the same way.
Right.
Like they're meeting with all of the different
Yeah.
groups saying, look, we have a future after this, and it can't be the ones that we've lived so far,
Right.
which is all separate nations that don't talk to each other and hide information from each other. So, right here, we'll get back.
My thought on the glass columns was that this is your legacy as you entered the columns. This is what the future would hold if you disappeared, if you didn't come out of the columns. This is the future and the legacy that you left.
Well,
And
but
then
obviously it's not true there.
Because she doesn't have the
She doesn't have children.
So those kids.
Okay. I'll take the, the thought behind it is that this is what would happen
If you continue on your path.
if the life that you're leading right now were to stop today or close, kids.
If you had
But
gone through the
if you come back out of it,
Yeah, if you
you
had
now
gone through the
know,
columns.
you now know what your future, what your current path is. And clearly, if you don't like that,
You
you
need
now
to
got
change it.
the act to go somewhere else. And I think, the clear answer here is that they have to, Aviendha has to help be able to find honor outside of combat somehow. They have to.
By being so
Roll back in
peacemakers
some of that.
instead of breaking the peace, they should actually help
Yeah.
keep it.
They have to learn the song.
But the only problem is you still have to have a remnant of a remnant. So then that raises the question, if that's not the remnant, what is?
Well, I think
Which is a whole
that
other
knowledge is what actually causes them to break, and like the disagreement over what they should do is actually what causes them to end up being a remnant.
So, yeah, right here.
I think that Aviendha is going to either directly or indirectly convince Rand to give the AL a purpose after the last battle ends.
Yeah.
If he gives them a directive like this that I did before, they have something to follow, they have a purpose, and I think she's going to be instrumental in somehow in getting him.
That's way too rational.
To do that.
As I say, I honestly don't think that we're necessarily going to see much come out of her trip through the rings. I think it is going to be something that happens post last battle, because I think it's going to be stuff that she works with Rand on, like, okay, this dragon speech you're going to set up, this is what's going to happen if we do this. Like, we need to ship this.
Well, the question becomes, is she gonna show up at that council at the Field of
I think
Memoir?
that she
Is she gonna be there?
Yeah.
And is Rand about to do this whole like, okay, this is what everyone needs to do, and she's gonna be like, and she's gonna stop it and maybe, I mean, I'd love to see her just walk in and finally, I'd love to see them talk. That'd be great. Okay, so that's the question, and a lot of people haven't spoken yet, so we'll get back, I try and get some.
Yes, that one's
Rebecca.
right.
Right. Yeah, in green shirt.
Okay. I think one of the things we've seen so far in the series is that the future isn't really set. I mean, you've got Minze viewings, which always come true, but the exact method of it is not necessarily set. The general effect is there. And the other really big part of that we had is Moraine's trip through the doorway. She saw 3 possibilities.
Yeah.
She saw different things that might happen. And so I really like his idea that this is what would happen, what your future would have been at the moment you went into the rings.
If you had not entered.
That kind of solves the problem.
Yeah.
This is, if you hadn't gone through, this is where you would have gone, but now you have a choice to do something more.
That's what I was thinking too.
Looney Theory.
Well, I think as much as important as it is for the Aiel to find and not lose their whole tradition and stuff, it seems like another huge thing that she's gonna have to solve is the fact that the Shanshan are taking over the world in the future that she saw, because no matter if the Aiel find whatever the thing is, if the Shanshan take over and defeat the Aiel, then it doesn't matter what they found, right? Because they're going to lose their tradition.
As I say, one of the interesting things about that is the fact that we see the fact that the Shanshan and the Sharans are having interactions. Because she talks about the people on the eastern side of the waste. And so, we've got Sharan and Shansen. we actually see some of Shara where we haven't seen like anything of Shara, pretty much. You know, it's like it's through her trip. In the last columns, we actually see some of Shara and some of their future, and it like that to me is fascinating.
Who else is depressed? We're never going to get that book.
Avienda's children's actions that actually drove the wedge through all that alliance.
Yeah.
So otherwise they were actually allies.
We're going to go far back and then come back around this way.
I mean, it could be as simple as just having Aviendha save Tuan. I mean, they talk back in the future about how the Empress changed, was killed, right?
Died.
Oh.
Didn't wasn't there.
That's interesting.
So, I mean, it could be just as simple as sometime in the last battle, Aviendha saves Tuan and history's reverted. Change things.
And it's a ripple of what was going to happen before Aviendha went through the rings, or the columns. Thank you.
Actually, one thing we haven't touched on, and that's where are all our characters? They're not in. You know, like they should live a long time because they're channels and they're not there. They're
all done.
Yeah, that was.
Are they on
where
the
is
side?
everybody?
They're all gone.
But again, that assumes the future without.
So we're
Well, again, in my mind, it assumes the future
versus
without.
free will.
Well, it assumes the future without her seeing the future.
That theme, by the way, is really very strong in the series.
But the other thing that you get is Tuan, at the moment Aviendha goes into the columns, is feuding with Rand, and the Shanshans are set up in this antagonistic mode. If they fix that later, whether or not it's because of what Aviendha does, that also changes with.
Yeah, again, we don't know how the Tarango works in the sense of, is it taking current events and then going from the current event from there? So,
But always Jordan sets it up so that free will is a very real problem.
yeah, he does.
It's not deterministic future.
Except in mid.
But even that,
when we say it's not deterministic,
even that has an out, and she says, okay, like the viewings are all on if the pattern runs. So
yeah, that's where there's
and if certain actions aren't done, the pattern does break, and so.
the Dark One's influence allows for much more unknown future than when he's not. When the port was sealed, the pattern had a huge amount of control over what was going to happen.
But I mean, the thing with
It allowed in the end, it allowed
in many ways, the Dark One has brought free will, or made free will much more important. Because the way you choose to fight the Dark One or choose to join him, and that is your choice. No one, that's not determined at all.
Yeah.
That is.
The wheel allowed for that. The wheel allowed Lanfear to
Certain
create it.
people will do it, but which ones, I think, is up to their choice.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we'll come back this time.
I'm really interested by something you said yesterday, because it seems like the future of the IEL, it's a lot based on the fact that Rand and Aviendha's children are really strong, and therefore they have status, and their infighting sort of creates the strife between the clans. And you mentioned yesterday that some people think that Rand and Aviendha, they may instill their children to change that future. And I was wondering what's the rationale behind that?
There was a theory that was submitted. I haven't posted it yet. Apologize for anyone that submitted theories that I haven't posted. The theory was submitted. The idea being that it was this uber channeling capability that children have was the deciding factor. That she's going to figure out that it's this, like they should not be. They should not be. And so the question becomes, maybe they don't have interaction. Because she sees that her children, it's their arrogance of her children, so maybe she doesn't have children with Rand. And maybe she realizes it's her connection.
And she has quadruplets with some other man?
Yes, exactly. Matt is what I'm saying. Next one. It's like, anyways. So, yeah.
Well, with regards to the future and keeping the Shan from taking over everything, you could look at the present, and Aviendha now has ties to the Kyrian throne because she's first sisters with the queen.
Oh, but they're not going to recognize that.
But here's what I'm saying, something that we found out last year was that the Andorran royal line has Aiel blood in them. And remember when Theresa asked Harriet about that?
Please share.
Well, she asked if the red hair means that they were descended from the people that were kidnapped. And she said yes.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting if the Aiel learn that hey, all these Andorans were really Aiel, and now she took over the Kyrian throne. If there was an alliance between the Aiel and Kyrian, that could keep the nations and the Aiel from splintering apart. And if you have a strong group in this area, that could keep all the Seanchan's plans of
So you're saying
taking
in
over.
the next book, we might see some beginning of that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're never gonna know exactly what happens, you know.
I had an idea though that, I mean, maybe I should have had this my loose theory, is that Elaine will go through the columns.
Oh.
And that would help. She would be kind of like the wise one, you know, kind of like when Moraine went through the rings, and maybe tie them together.
If she can do that well quickly.
Well, it's, the Tarangiel doesn't need channeling.
But it does have a strong effect on.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think
Oh,
she'll put her babies.
actually, there was one other thing I wanted to mention that.
Actually, she'll go through it while she's pregnant because she knows that the babies are gonna be fine.
One other thing I wanted to mention that hasn't been brought up about the wise one's knowledge of Tel'aran'rhian, and that's Need. What if Need somehow either brought Nakomi to Aviendha or Aviendha to Nakomi? Because didn't she have the dream Tel'aran'rhian with her that Elaine gave her?
I believe she does.
Yes,
That's
that
a
has
good
been
one.
forgotten about in the books, like the key.
Well, maybe they tried to keep it on the
Referring to
down
it just
low.
being with the rebels, when it's not.
Yeah, I believe she does have it, so, yeah.
She could have, you know, fallen asleep, woken up there, accidentally used Need based on what she's thinking about.
Nakomi has blood vision, I like.
Well, and that would be interesting, because we see that Tarangiel affect each other, particularly if they're related to each other, because we see that in Edwin's.
Oh yeah, she goes through the
And if
columns
she's
with
got,
that.
if she's got,
Yeah, we don't know, but yeah.
that's
if
right.
she has it, that could be why
It would be
that
a nice
reacts.
thing, yeah. It's just that they
Reacts
keep
really
saying
well.
in the books that that particular Tarangiel was with, in fact, they said that even in the game, well, that that particular Tarangiel, which does not require channeling, was one of the ones that Sheriam stole. Yeah, which is an error because actually it is with Aviendha.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
That's a good point.
It is.
I forgot about that. Dream
Yeah,
Tarangiel.
that's nice, but I just think that the team children have forgotten that.
Don't they go through naked though?
Not the columns.
Not the columns.
Or at least, we've never seen a wise one go through the columns.
Yeah, that's true. Right here.
So one thing that we've kind of touched on a little bit, but no one's kind of brought up about just, you know, the Seanchan themselves. And I think we all pretty much agree that we're not big fans of how their society works. But that's an understatement. But they seem to be the antagonist in all of the, you know, it's the you know, they're the ones that are trying to take over and all of that future things. Is it that there's not going to be any peace with this Seanchan or any kind of incorporation with, you know, with everyone? Because I think Linda had brought up about how Egwene is trying to bring all of them together. The only ones who's not being brought in together in any of the scenarios is the Seanchan.
The Seanchan channelist, that's true. I mean, Rand sort of does force this peace somehow, but it was Aviendha's children that broke that.
And this, I can't remember
So,
who's...
I mean, we're seeing it from her point of view that from her children's point of view, that they were bad.
Right.
But no, I don't think they are particularly.
Right, and someone had brought up the point about, you know, if Aviendha were to save Tuan, or there was some type of
Which is a good
thing
idea.
that would help
Indeed it would.
bring that in. So,
That's good. I like that one. Any other questions?
One thought
Yeah.
about the remnant of the remnant. Part of that sort of depends upon whether or not you view the travelers, the tinkers, as already the remnant, and then it's a remnant of them that survives. Because, you know, they're the remnant of what was left.
True ideal.
The true ideal.
Yeah, and they're
And
following
so-
the remnant of the way of the leaf because it's not the proper
Right,
way of the
and
leaf.
it's some derivative of them. And so the Aiel are all concerned about the remnant of the remnant, not understanding that they're already completely out of that.
It's possible, although I really believe that the dream walking wise ones are, I wish we had seen some of the information. I mean, I have to they know a lot about.
It's either that
so
or it's a shadow.
Or it's a shadow.
No, because The remnant has to
Then we'll
follow
come back to
Rand,
you.
they obviously don't, so they have to
Behind you, and then we'll
qualify
come back.
themselves there.
I was thinking maybe the remnant would be Aviendha, who she convinces to change, to make peace with the Shantan and the rest of the group, or whatever they do. That would be the remnant. Some of the Aiel wouldn't be able to handle that. Like we've already been shown that Aiel can't necessarily handle the truth.
Yeah.
And they go off and do their own
That's
thing.
right.
But the remnant of the remnant would be the ones that Aviendha can, show them what's gonna happen and make them change. That would be the remnant.
That's the other thing I've been saying on my blog.
A lot of the IO are gonna be killed.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, the remnant,
He will break, like he said, he'll pour out his blood as water.
we can't forget that that there's gonna be a giant battle taking place, so it's not just gonna be them splintering and fighting amongst themselves, it's gonna be them fighting the hordes of Trollocs and Channelers that they're fighting, so.
I like that we're possibly seeing what will be the major conflict with the Shanshan. I like that we're being possibly given the fourth age.
Yeah.
A little bit kind of like, hey, if you ever wondered what happened in the fourth age, the Shanshan. You just call it like fourth age is Shanshan age. Because they seem to. There doesn't seem to be anything or any suggestion that what's going to happen is we're going to get rid of the Shanshan, they're going to go back and all the happily ever after. It seems like they're going to stay, and even if the Aiel aren't what Aviendha saw them in the end, maybe she saved them and they're not that. That doesn't mean the Shanshan aren't what we saw. And
I
sort of.
suspect they will actually have to change.
I just-
I think both
But
sides.
the question becomes really, the Shanshan are still going to progress, it seems. Like,
They're here to
there doesn't
stay.
seem to be anything that's going to stop them necessarily, but they may not destroy the Aiel, and the Aiel may not become what they do become, but that doesn't mean that the Shanshan will somehow.
They made a, they made
Yeah,
a,
but that's right, I mean, they too will have their own distraction.
Yeah,
But Matt has already.
Yeah,
Yes, go
because it's like,
What
the channel.
What if the way
We'll
she,
actually
I was like,
fix it.
what if what changes is that Aviendha shows Tuan that she can change?
Well, she already knows, she knows
No,
her.
but teaches her and fully breaks that into the
Yeah, she's
Shanshan
in
society,
it.
and that's what changes Shanshan.
But
But I think
that would
canons-
change the
I think
Shanshan.
the canons are what changes. I think Matt has already changed
Yeah,
the Shanshan.
but that would change the
I think what is going to change them will be Matt. I think Matt has already changed the fourth age.
But that would change the Shanshan.
So I'd be surprised if.
Well, no, because we see those in the 4J, in
Yeah.
Section C, so those things.
I know, I'm saying he's already kind of created, he's already made that part of the fourth age. I don't think the Shanshan are going to be dramatically different. They might not be as aggressive
Well,
against the Aiel.
But that's what I'm saying, is part of what we see through there is that they're still grabbing all of the channels that they can find and coloring. And part of what changes is that part of their culture, because Aviendha goes through and forces Tuan to start channeling, and changes that.
It's possible.
They,
Well, I
we
think
also,
events will do that anyway.
Maybe. Tuan does never have.
those are the Shanshan that are on the continent right now. We have to remember
Yeah.
that there's an entire another continent of Shanshan that have had no interaction
Yeah.
with Matt or Tuan as the Empress now, and they're warring amongst each other, so
And they're gonna.
that Shanshan could be, the Shanshan that we know now that are in Randland could not, that could not be the Shanshan that we saw in the future. That could be the Shanshan from the actual continent that they're on, that are coming to.
Well.
Via Shara.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
Well, some come from the.
Yeah.
Well, and,
Yeah.
part of the issue with that though is that we do see the Empress we see them talking about the Empress who ruled, and we don't see a mention of new, we may not have been.
Yeah, but they said that she died, and then someone said, her rescuing her. But then we don't know about what's going on. Like, the whole royal family is dead except her now. So and all of the high lords and ladies are warring for the throne right now, which is still in the Shanshan. So.
Well, they just picked up traveling, so they
Yeah.
can go back and.
Yeah, that's true.
And I
Yeah.
don't see the Shanshan, even if there was some big reveal. I mean, because there's those huge two factions now back in the homeland, giving up the collar and.
Yeah, it's just the same as the Aiel giving up
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe a remnant of the
They're both
Shanshan
going
will
to
give
be
it up.
broken by their.
Yeah, and maybe
Maybe
Aviendha will break the Shanshan. It's possible, or help to break them, and then we'll hopefully work it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I just want to put forward the idea that, well, there's probably going to be the last battle with the armies and then the magic last battle where we'll have Rand and Channelers and they're doing their thing. And somebody was pointing out that we don't see most of our main characters in Aviendha's future, but Aviendha seems to have survived the last battle because she has kids and was always talking to them about what's the Aiel's purpose.
So by the time her daughter's 17, she's not there. She doesn't live very long.
Okay, but.
Well, again, that assumes that she has
They
kids.
speak of her as though she's in parts.
But what if one of the major things that Aviendha does as a result of having gone through the columns a second time is to change who's at that last magic battle? Maybe she went and she shouldn't have, or she didn't go and she should have, or she keeps someone else back. Like, maybe she's there and exposed to massive magic or channeling, and that's why her children are super channelers. Her children are super channelers, so they're arrogant, so they lead the Aiel off on this path. And I mean, this is all so supposition, but
We like that.
I like that.
What actually happens is more than audience. Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe this, but if you were one to believe that the fourth age would actually be an age when there is no channeling, and maybe Aviendha and Rand have some part in making that come about, that would sort of neatly sort of end the Shanshan's dominance.
It stops everything.
Because their dominant would no longer be relevant in any way.
But Andor would be because they have the cannons.
Or if they end up obtaining Sidar as opposed to Sidin. I'm just throwing that out there.
Are you saying that they're gonna sing, and when they sing together, stop channeling?
I've heard people say that.
Singing works like channeling. That's a good addition.
Back to the musical.
It's a rumor I've heard.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we've reached that.
Yeah, and on that note, that's the end of this panel. Next up in this room is the Ilian's National Trivia Bee. I tried to make it not quite so brutal, so I really did. But so come back and play with us in a half hour. Thanks.